Savannah Kepley. I am a middle school language arts teacher and an ELA resource creator, and I am here to answer your questions that you have submitted to me about the resources on my site or any other questions that you have about teaching middle school language arts. And so let's go ahead and get started so we can maximize our time together. And let's look at our first question. These are our August questions and answers. And the first one is, how do you plan for homeroom time or the morning time before class begins? So what expectations and procedures do I follow? So this is a great question. I love homeroom time. It's a great time to connect with your students, but there is some expectations that I follow with my class. So the first thing I have them do is sit in assigned seats because I think it's important. Otherwise, it kind of creates a little chaos. So we do come in, we sit in our assigned seats. I take attendance, and I take attendance by calling everybody's name out because I think everybody wants to hear their name, and it's a good time to check in with someone. So I could be like, Camden, and he'll say here, or if he is a little grumpy, I can be like, what's wrong, Sunshine? Why are you so grumpy? Can I help you? Like that kind of thing. So it's a good way to connect with students. And then after that, I immediately start CNN 10 because I think it's important that our students know what's happening in the world. So I play CNN 10, and the expectation is that everybody's quiet and listening during that time. And usually at the end of CNN 10, we are done with class and are done with homeroom time, and I dismiss them. Question number 2, do you have students write all bell ringers in their notebook? For this question, it kind of depends on what type of bell ringer it is. So for question of the day, they don't have to write the question in the notebook, but they are responding to the question in their notebook. I hope that makes sense. So the way they respond to the question, they should use enough context clues so I know what the question was. So that's first. I used to actually have them write the question down, but that ended up being a waste of time. So now they just write their answer to it. Now, if it's something like grammar or vocabulary or a spiral review or a standards-based one, they do write the notes in their notebook or the short little mini lesson, but then the activities are digital, or I print them sometimes and have them like glue them in their notebook, and then they do it on that. So it's really up to you and how you want to do it. I would say maximize your time the best way possible. So if you see you have slow writers, then I would just not have them write the question and not have them do the activities in their notebook. I would rely more on the digital activity or for accountability. All right. Notebooks have been a bane of my existence sometimes. Like I used to feel like I had to check them every week. I had to pack them in crates and I had to take them home, and it consumed me and it burnt me out. And I was like, I have to find a different way to do this. And so now what I do is I check them on the second week of school, the fourth week of school, the 8th week of school, and then periodically the remaining quarters, because by that time they're in a habit and they're doing pretty well. You do not have to grade everything, but grading it at the beginning of the year creates good habits, right? You can see where your students are struggling, and so you know how to support them. If you see students are not responding to the questions in the 4 sentences, then you can support them at the beginning instead of them just doing it incorrectly throughout the whole year. Now, how I have my students do it is I create a Google slide. I create a Google slide. I set it up as an 8x10. I title each slide as to what they're supposed to put on that slide, and they take pictures of their notebook and they upload it to the corresponding slides, and then they submit that to me. Then I put a little rubric in Google Classroom, and I can check through really quickly to make sure they're staying on top of things, and then I can course correct as needed. Now, the other times, like the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, I'll randomly check like an RTQT question or notes or something like that, and I'll give them like a little prize if they do it. But I do not check it after the first quarter for a grade. That's just how I had to do it for my mental sanity, and the students know. Like in my lunch group, I would say, all right, everybody who has their bell ringer done gets to go, and I would check it off as I went around the classroom, and that's how they exited the classroom to go to lunch. Now, that was just a way to manage that group. So, just coming up with fun ways to incentivize your students to make sure that they're doing their activities in their notebook. That's going to be up to you and what works best for you. I feel like that was a really long winded answer, but everybody has a system that works best for them. You just kind of have to play around and see. Next question. How do you handle students who want to sleep in class? Okay. So I don't want to be like controversial here, but the first thing I would make sure that you're engaging, that you're moving around, and that you're planning activities that excite your students. Now, I know not every day is going to be exciting. I get that. But there are things that we can do as teachers to make sure students stay engaged. Now, I do not have a lot of problems with students laying their head down. If I do see a student lay their head down, I'm like, head up, buttercup, or something like that. Or I go stand near them and they put their head up. But I have already built a very positive relationship with my students, and my class is very high energy and engaging, and we're moving like that from one activity to the next. So students really do not have a lot of time to put their head down. Now, there's always going to be exceptions, right? There's always going to be a student who there's going to be students who need to put their head down. And so if I see a student like maybe Derek or something has his head down, I'll go over to him. Like if I say, head up, buttercup, and he keeps it down, then I know something's going on. So I crouch down next to him and I'm like, are you okay? Is there anything that I can help you with? Do you need to go to the bathroom, get some water, splash some water on your face, that kind of thing? And so you can kind of check in with them that way, because sometimes there might be something going on at home. Now, do give students a one pass opportunity to put their head down in class, because sometimes students need that, right? There's something going on outside of the classroom that's bigger than our relationship with them, where they need to have a moment where they're not focused on instruction and lessons. They just need to collect themselves. So if they take that one class pass, I usually contact our school counselors to make sure they can check in with them. And then if they try to do it again, we have some conversations out in the hallway, like, what's going on? How can I support you? I make it all about how can I help the student, instead of attacking them and having a power struggle with the student. Because when you have a power struggle, then you're not going to have a good relationship and you're not really going to be able to move forward. So I'll take them out in the hallway. I'll be like, do you know why you're out here? Usually they'll say yes, because they have their head down. I'm like, yes, that's an expectation in my classroom, is that you keep your head up. How can I support you? What can I do to help you make that happen? Tell me why you have your head down. What can I do to support you? Now, I know that's probably not a very popular answer, because students should keep their head up. They should be engaged in class. Yes, they should, but sometimes they need a little extra motivation. Another thing I do is I have a lot of positive incentives. So, like I start the year off with tickets. Like, really, it's just construction paper cut up, yellow construction paper cut up. So I'll go around. If there is a student that has their head down, let's say there was, I would go around them and I'd be like, oh, look at Sam, he's doing a great job, and I give him a ticket. I'll be like, thank you, Sarah, for being engaged, and I give her a ticket. So when I say thank you to the people around that person doing the right thing, and that goes for anything, like if someone's off task, or they're just not working on what you want them to do, or they're not meeting your expectations, if you point out the students who are and say, thank you, Mahogany, for doing such a great job. Here's a ticket. Thank you so much for your hard work. It really does course correct the other students. I don't know why it does. There's probably some psychological thing behind it, but at least it works in my classroom. Now, I do have a teacher down the hallway who teaches math, who has more of a struggle, and not because of her personality. She's a great math teacher, but sometimes students are shut out on math. So what she does is that she gives them their one pass, and then after that, she takes their desk away and she has a hard wooden chair that they have to sit in with a clipboard to do the math. It works for her. She just keeps track of it. And then they have to sit in that seat for 3 days or something like that. But it works. It works for the math class. So there's another idea for you. I love this one. Cozy libraries and flex seatings are fairly catchy incentives. What is the best way to offer the opportunity to enjoy the area for students in a fair and engaging way? Seating's great, right? But I don't think it's practical to use, at least for my teaching style, it's not practical to use in my whole classroom. So I do have a couple of ways that students can participate in flex seating in my classroom. Like I have the rolly chairs and that kind of thing, just the cushy chairs, the camping chairs that they can sit in. So what I do with my class is they can trade their tickets in for a chance to win one of the cushy chairs. We call them cushy chairs. One of the cushy chairs for a week, and then I do a ticket drawing. So anybody who would like to participate in that, or anybody who would like that sort of flex seating, can enter their tickets that they've earned in class that week into the drawing, and then I draw out the names for that, and that they get the flex seating for the week. So there's an idea for you. If you do that type of incentive, you can start passing out tickets to people who are doing a great job, collect them on Friday. Then that group of people, those 3 or 4 students, will be able to use the seats for the rest of the week. Or whoever wins will be able to use the seats for the rest of the week. Hope that helps. Enforce my classroom management plan. I feel that I don't know when to decide a student's name goes on the board, and I'm so used to redirecting and not giving consequences. So, how to enforce your classroom management plan? Now, I do have to say, it should be more than just putting the students' names on the board. You need to have a positive aspect to it as well. So, like I've said before, I use tickets for my classroom management plan to begin the year, and then I have other incentives. So, if you're a member of ELA Unlimited, if you look in this section right here, then you will see the different incentives that you can do. I usually do about one every 6 weeks. I change it up so they're not getting bored with the incentive. So, that being said, I do a positive incentive, and then I also do the consequence thing. And usually by at least the 4th week, definitely into the 2nd quarter, I have almost zero issues with student behavior because I've been enforcing it really strictly to begin with. So if you're doing the name on the board, which is how I start it, if you're having to redirect student behavior, in my opinion, their name needs to go on the board because they're not meeting your expectation. And you need to let them know the first time. I mean, that's a warning. So they need to see it that they're not meeting your expectation. If you just give them the teacher look, and do not put the warning on the board, they're going to try to push it and see how much they can get away with. So anytime a student does not meet your expectation, then their name needs to go on the board. At the same time, you need to be passing out tickets or whatever you're doing to positively enforce the students who are doing it. So if you see that 2 students are talking while you're trying to teach, their name goes on the board immediately. But then at the flip time, like a couple seconds later, or maybe a minute later, you see another group of students engaged and paying attention. You say again, thank you so much for paying attention during that. I know it wasn't the most exciting thing, but you did it. Here's some tickets for you. Like that kind of thing. So you're saying thank you. You're celebrating positive behavior, and students kind of gravitate towards that. They want to receive the positive praise. So that way you're taking away sometimes students want to do things to get attention, right? And a lot of times students are conditioned to do negative things for attention. So they'll talk or act out so you will give them the attention, right? So if you start giving attention to positive things and really celebrating it, it brings students around to that side. But again, you have to be consistent. So if they are not meeting your expectation, especially at the beginning of the year, you have to be consistent with your consequences. So if you're redirecting a student, then that's when their name goes on the board. Then you should have some individual conversations if you see that it's starting to happen or happening consistently with one student. How can I use the materials to do stations? Question, because I love doing stations, and so I think my materials are conducive to stations, especially the quest. So if you print out the quest, you can have one quest going at each station, and then you can rotate between that. Another way to kind of do small groups is to do the learning pathway. Have a couple of students working on the same activity and have different stations set up around the room so you can pop in and check on each station. So if you don't know what the learning pathway is, let me show it to you really quick. So this is the power standards. So I'm going to go to section 1. And what I do is I give my students a pre-assessment that gives me an idea of where they are academically or with this concept. And then, based on their score, I assign them to level 1, which is they need more foundational skills. Level 2, they're building their understanding of the concept. And then level 3 is where they apply. Like, these are the students who really understand. So what you could do is you could have stations going with level 1 activities, and then station 2 is level 2 activities. Station 3 is people working on level 3 activities. You can split it up that way. I do have a learning pathway here where you can assign students to different activities. So that's another way to do it. But again, if you're just looking for straight up stations, then I would definitely focus. Well, here's some stations right here, but I would definitely focus on these quests because each quest has 5 activities, or each quest set has 5 activities, and you can easily separate your class out. So a couple of students are working on quest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then every 10 minutes you're switching. Are special education students included in your classes? Do you teach with a special education teacher? I do have special education students. I actually started out as a special education teacher, and so I love it. I love we call them inclusion where I'm from. We call it, so I love my inclusion classes. In fact, this year, I think I'm going to have 2 inclusion classes. So I do have special education students in my classroom, and I do have a special education teacher that comes in for the whole period, and we do team teach. So just like I was talking about with the learning pathway and the stations, she would be in charge of one of those stations or learning pathways. Or when we do reading activities, she takes on a reading role and I take on a reading role, and then we have a conversation between each other about our internal thoughts. And when we stop and jot, we really play off of each other. Like, what were you thinking? What kind of questions popped into your head? Like that kind of thing. So if you do have a special education teacher that does come into your classroom, I would suggest meeting with them to talk to them about what they see themselves doing in the classroom, so you can kind of be on the same page. Now, when I team taught, it was not always sunshine and rainbows. Like, I had a teacher who said, just sit in the back, honey, and take notes. And I was like, that's not my role, right? So I think it's really important, like, to talk to your co-teacher that comes in, so everybody has an equal part in the classroom. And I also let students know that we are both teachers, that they're so lucky that they get to have 2 amazing teachers in their classroom. Like, bonus, right? They're so lucky. And so we approach it from that angle. In addition, like when we separate for tests, because we have a lot of separate settings, we do not single out our special education students. We have like a group A and a group B, and so we just randomly mix the students. And so we still have separate settings, still have a small group, but group A will go out one time and then group B will go out the next time. If you have a bigger class, you can do group A, B, C, D, or something like that. So you're constantly switching the groups that are going out. So no one's like singled, like, oh, I'm the special education student. So there's a couple of ideas of working with your co-teacher. I love my inclusion classes are some of my favorite classes that I have. So embrace it, love it. And the materials on the site can be modified to them. And I think that goes into the next question. How do you adapt your requirements for students who process more slowly or have difficulty generating ideas in such a short time? Glad you asked this because not everybody learns at the same pace, right? So, what I put on the planning guides is an ideal plan. Now, that is a plan that I might roll out with my advanced students and then my academically gifted students and then my regular classes as the year goes on. But with your special education classes, sometimes are your classes that have students who struggle. Sometimes you are going to have to modify. Now, you might not have to modify the whole class. It's okay to modify for the individual students. So, for example, in one of my classes last year, I had a student who was from a different country. He spoke English and he wrote English. He just didn't do it very well. And so he just only had to write 2 sentences when the other students had to write 4 sentences. And he knew that. Like, we had a conversation when I saw that he was struggling to keep up. So you can see the students who are struggling. You can have individual conversations with them, be like, hey, I don't want this to stress you out. Why don't you, instead of doing the full RTQT, just do the R and the T, which is restating the question and telling your thoughts. Or just find a quote that supports your basic answer and then tell me why you selected that quote. So you can have these conversations with the students that you see are struggling, and it's okay to modify for them and they appreciate it. So if we're taking notes in class, then I will print out the fill in the blank notes for students who struggle to keep up. So modify for those students. They don't have to do everything as long as they're doing something and it being engaged in the class and working at their level, then you're good. Also for bell ringers or practice activities, if there's 10 questions, I might give some students, they only have to do 5. So just be aware of how you can modify for those students so they do not get overwhelmed. Now, if it's a processing issue, like if you're doing journal questions or that kind of thing, maybe consider giving it ahead of time. Like, hey, this is what we're going to do tomorrow. I just kind of want you to think about it tonight, get some ideas, and then you can come in the class ready to go. So just being prepared or preparing them ahead of time of what's coming might take away some of their anxiety. Well, the weekly planning guides review novels. You have whole novel studies, but I was curious of how they fit into the rest of the activities you have. The planning guides have spots for reading, and that's where you can plug in what you're reading. So let's take a look at it. As you can see here, here's a reading section. So you can plug in some whole novels that you're reading as a class, or if you don't do that in your classroom, you can plug in stories from your literature book or short stories into these spots. So what I do in my classroom is I use whole novels. So we read together, we jot together, and then we apply the standard that we're learning after we read. And I don't do all of the questions that come in the novel guides. What I usually do is I have like one question that's standard based. So we read, we answer that question. So they're applying what they learned about the standard to this book. I plan on making the weekly planning guides for the entire school year. It's been the most helpful addition to your website. Yes, I have had such positive response to these weekly planning guides. So I do plan on using them throughout, or I do plan on creating them throughout the year, and I'm so glad that they are helpful for you. If you don't know what we're talking about with planning guides, if you go to the main page of ELA Unlimited, scroll down, you will see up to, I think I have week 9. I just posted that one yesterday. So I have up to week 9 of the planning guides. And again, you don't have to follow them exactly. That is an ideal plan, so you can pick and choose and modify as you wish. I hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email me. I'm so thankful for you. I'm thankful for teachers who are excited about teaching and who want to do better at their job and create positive and engaging environments for their classroom. So thank you for being that teacher, because you're here trying to learn and trying to add to your tool belt of teacher skills so you can be the best that you can be. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, just let me know. If you're interested in ELA Unlimited with all of these resources, I'll link it below. Otherwise, happy teaching. Bye.